So originally I intended for this video to be a what we will see in the next season video, as I generally do like reading this webtoon. As a child I had an interest in Greek mythology and just mythology in general, so it's why Lore Olympus had originally captured my attention. Plus the art style is simply gorgeous. However, whilst trying to make that video, I realised that I was actively trying to avoid talking about Hades and Persephone's relationship, as their relationship makes me extremely uncomfortable. Lore Olympus, if you didn't know, is a webcomic on Webtoon which is the modern retelling of the kidnapping of Persephone. The myth itself has various versions. It's difficult to pinpoint the original myth. Lore Olympus has grown a huge fan base very quickly in 2 years. I'd argue it's possibly the most popular and well-known webcomic on Webtoon. You'll find fans of this comic everywhere. Recently, Season 1 of Lore Olympus ended and the webtoon is currently on hiatus, with Season 2 approaching. I thought it would be best to discuss the main issue with this webcomic, which is its problematic pairing. On a side note, I thought I'd mention this anyway. I've never shipped Hades and Persephone, as honestly the webtoon never gave me a reason to. This isn't shade on the webtoon by the way, and it's an extremely unpopular opinion about this series, well at least in the webtoon comic section. We're supposed to be rooting for these two characters to get together, but I cannot in good conscience do that. I'll get into why I was never aboard SS Hades. Is that the ship name? I haven't seen much criticism of Lore Olympus. There's been the odd Tumblr or Twitter post, but no one listens to those silly billies. Most of Tumblr and Twitter idolise this webcomic. It wasn't until I came across this video whilst doing some research to see if anyone else had a similar issue with Lore Olympus. I found Clementine Productions' video. Not only did this channel call out Lore Olympus, but 2 other popular webtoons. Most definitely better than this one, although I don't agree with everything said, she brought up some good points, especially about the 3 main webtoons she talked about. Actually, I almost quit making this video, but thought I'd make it anyway as I feel it's important to discuss the problematic relationship of Hades and Persephone. We are first introduced to Hades and Persephone at one of Zeus's parties. Hades' first impression of Persephone is purely of lust, which inherently isn't a bad thing, but it's not a good thing either. He just kind of oogles at her. He even takes out his glasses to just stare at her body. Her brothers and him devise a plan to separate her from Artemis so he can introduce himself to Persephone. I know it's because Artemis doesn't like him, but I can't help but feel it's slightly predatory behaviour. Isolating someone so they can't escape your advances is highly manipulative. The plan doesn't work, and honestly if it did, I don't think Persephone would have appreciated his advances, so she ends up at his house in a different way to portray Hades in a better light, I feel. The whole moment isn't portrayed negatively, more like Hades has met his love at first sight, and wow, it's so romantic that he's just staring at her, imagining that she's naked. It's not even the first time they've met, which about that's a whole other mess. Of course, most relationships start from sexual attraction, but when it doesn't grow from that, it's an issue, and unfortunately it never seems to grow from that. Of course I understand as the story continues, their relationship will develop, but his attraction to her only seems to stem from her looks. Hades repeatedly makes remarks on her appearance, and even talks about her quite sexually. I've never really felt they've had an actual meaningful connection. So when they do finally kiss, it falls flat. Yes, they like each other, but the way I see it, they don't know each other well enough for that kiss to mean anything. Yes, I know you can just kiss someone for whatever reason, but we're supposed to be rooting for this pairing, and a meaningless kiss does nothing for it. Not to mention the build-up to the kiss was extremely underwhelming. It was basically the slap slap kiss trope. Sadly, most of Webtoon's relationships are conveyed in this manner. And understandably so, as its demographic is young girls who mostly consume media like this for shipping material, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, just that it's the audience Webtoon target. I know this isn't aimed at me, and that's what makes it so dangerous. Okay, so this is a big one, and one of the reasons why Hades and Persephone's relationship is problematic. I'm going to be brutally honest, I find it very creepy. Hades is 2,000 years old, whereas Persephone is only 19 years old. Currently she's 20 in the webtoon, but I digress, they did first meet when she was even younger. The age gap between Hades and Persephone is a problem that even its biggest fans find uncomfortable. Many choose to ignore it, however, a lot do enable it, and state it's not problematic as Persephone is over 18. She isn't a child, yes, but she's characterised as one. Even so, usually when 19, you're still in education and just beginning to navigate in the adult world. You're still brand new to how the real world works. People tend to forget, but you're still a teenager at 19. Especially in Persephone's case. She's extremely naive and childlike. She was heavily sheltered her entire life by her mother. Honestly though, she does act like a typical 19-year-old girl. Whereas in Hades' case, he is characterised as an older man. Obviously we don't have a comparison in real life, but he looks like a middle-aged man from his appearance and actions in the webtoon. What exactly do teenagers and adults have in common to be romantically interested in each other? An adult and teen are on completely different stages of life. I don't think I need to make this point any more clearer, but it's gross. The comic doesn't shy away from the age gap. It's so in your face and even mentioned by the characters themselves. They are self-aware, but that doesn't really mean anything if nothing is done about it. I think it would have hurt to have Persephone older, but then again I do believe having a teenage protagonist is more relatable to its demographic. So Persephone's age and age gap itself was presumably a deliberate choice. Also an issue of power dynamics. Hades is Persephone's boss, not to mention he is the king of the underworld, so he harbours an amount of power over her. Persephone herself even understands this. And an age gap only adds to the power imbalance in their relationship. It's an issue when your partner can potentially control you. Persephone is shown to be extremely beautiful. Her character design has the whole doe-eye look, which further amplifies her innocence and vulnerability. She's petite yet curvy, naive yet intelligent, and she's extremely over-sexualized. She kind of falls under the born sexy yesterday trope. Usually I don't care what anyone wears, that be in fiction or real life. Especially in real life, wear whatever you want. In Persephone's case, she's overly sexualized to the point of not even realizing it, and it's kind of off-putting. I don't know, usually I wouldn't care what character wears. It's just here it's done a way to be there as the male gaze for the male characters so they can express how hot she is to the readers. Persephone is often depicted with childlike behaviour, which makes it even more bizarre to see her so sexualized. Acting like a child is not sexy. Let's not normalise this, as we already have women acting like this online. It's a prevalent issue in today's society. Hades seems to have a certain type of woman he is romantically interested in. Young, immature, vulnerable women. Women who have yet to grow and are still finding themselves. His first experience of sorts was with Hera. Hera or Hera? I don't know, I just call it Hera normally. Okay. In chapter 78 we are shown how the two first met. She nurses him back to health and then things begin to escalate, and the two start a fling, which is said to have eventually come to the end in the 80s. Hera is portrayed as simple and immature in this chapter, quite different from the Hera the reader knows. The way she is depicted in this chapter is very familiar with how Persephone acts. It also parallels Persephone and Hades' first encounter with each other. Now on to Minth. Minth is probably the second most hated character in the series. Number 1 goes to this. At first glance she's rude and seems like a gold digger, but her actions when explained humanise her more and we see a deeply insecure character. Even though it's clear to the reader that Minth is an insecure character, I'd always viewed her as not mature but older in a way Persephone is not. However, chapter 46 really opened my eyes to how similar she is to Persephone. Not in character traits, just her demeanour. The way this panel showcases Minth. She just looks so vulnerable and small in comparison to Hades. She's also very childish in the way she is depicted in some panels. Many readers began to sympathise with Minth, yet it all gets destroyed the minute she becomes an abuser. Also, don't take that the wrong way. The way she treats Hades in chapter 76 is horrific, but the way Minthi is characterised just feels like a plot device to help push Hades and Persephone's relationship. And finally, Persephone. Although his attraction to Persephone is physical, it also seems like he's protective of her. He doesn't want her to become tainted by the cruelty in the world. Even Hades himself tends to view Persephone as a child. Persephone symbolises the hope he so desperately wants, and you can't just put someone on a pedestal like that. It seems Hades needs someone to fix him, someone who will heal his pain, as well as someone who is just as broken as he is. I think he would better be suited to someone similar his age or on the same maturity level at least. I understand he is lonely, but a relationship won't fix the deeper scars Hades carries. Hades needs a therapist, not a wife. I don't know if this was intentional to portray that Hades has a certain type. Even so, it's fairly transparent that he does have a type, and you can see it never leads him into a healthy and loving relationship. His trauma is holding him back, and it's not great that the story feels like it's trying to say finding your soulmate will fix you. I could go into more detail why I don't like Hades and Persephone's relationship, but I think I've talked enough about it. I think the main problem with Webtoon as a whole is that the majority of its comics are slowly beginning to be adapted into shows, which will again lead more people into it. There aren't that many people calling out Webtoon for its problematic aspects. Even so, there are plenty of gems on this app. Unfortunately, there are lots of problematic and outdated ones. I understand reading these webcomics are just for fun, and it shouldn't be taken entirely seriously, but I think the huge problem is that its target demographic is children. My 12-year-old sister reads Webtoon sometimes, and I don't want her believing this is how relationships should be. It's not healthy, and it's important for a child to know what a healthy relationship looks like. So when they eventually begin to pursue a relationship, they'll spot the red flags immediately and run. And I guess in that sense, it doesn't just apply to children. Adults could also benefit knowing what a healthy relationship looks like. Plus, I know I'm not the only one who's bored of seeing relationships portrayed in this manner. I've always found it difficult to criticize things, especially as I know the amount of love and effort that goes into making, well, any form of media. You can tell the creator Rachel is extremely passionate about what she does, and I'm aware that she stated that she takes negative feedback to heart, but I'm not going to shy away from the problematic aspects of this webtoon. Criticism is also not a personal attack. Nothing is perfect and free from critique. As long as you're not attacking the actual people behind the creation, it's not bad to voice your opinion. All of us perceive things differently. As a creator, you have to understand that your work no longer belongs just to you when you release it out to the world. People will either cherish it, completely despise it, or just be neutral with it. I understand that it's difficult to fully accept that. You've also got to bear in mind the people who will really twist the narrative to align with their own disgusting viewpoint. Lolita, for example, it's a book about a paedophile grooming a young girl. The author made that novel to expose paedophiles, but somehow its story was romanticised, and to this day people still think it's a love story.
I definitely do, but we're not going to talk about that.
This kind of links into my next point, that fiction affects reality. I'm not saying that the readers of Lore Olympus are stupid and don't understand the difference between fiction and reality. Even if you're educated and understand, it isn't the kind of relationship you want in real life. Some people won't, and that's very scary. There are things I like about this webtoon, as I mentioned before. I think the art is gorgeous, it's very visually pleasing to look at, and I love the colour scheme, as well as the use of colour to convey the mood of a scene. It's done quite well in my opinion. Furthermore, I do somewhat find myself invested in the underlying plot, and its characters have the potential to be interesting. It even makes sure to handle difficult subjects with care, exploring, just to name a few, anxiety, trauma and assault, in a way that many can relate to. However, I know some feel it could be portrayed in a better manner, and I somewhat agree, but many fans seem to be drawn to Lore Olympus because of this. Although I stated the main demographic is children/teens, it would be wrong of me if I didn't mention that many women in their 30s and 20s are fan of Lore Olympus. They feel represented, and if you find comfort in that, it's fine. Nevertheless, as the webcomic continues, the main focus shifts more and more onto the troublesome relationship. Sadly, this will never change, as the majority of its audience are solely reading it for that relationship. By the way, I just thought I'd mention this, but I'm in no way trying to shame you if you like this comic. If you like it, continue to do so. Just remember it's romanticising a problematic relationship. And I know I've said that a lot, but it really is a problematic relationship. Webtoon is definitely miles better than the other webcomic sites and apps, but even so, it still needs to be better. I understand Webtoon picks the comics it wants to be the face of Webtoon, and it bases that on its audience. It's kind of exploiting that, unfortunately. And Lore Olympus is far from the worst webcomic on the internet. I don't think Rachel's ulterior motive is to romanticise or normalise paedophilia. However, with its extreme popularity, you need to be accountable and have at least some responsibility for what message you're trying to convey at the end of the day. Thank you for your time and for listening to me ramble.